Welcome to Division 83's Training Library. I am Nikki Maddox, and today we're going to be covering flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program. It's a government-run insurance through FEMA, and it covers losses sustained in a flood situation, but Farmers actually is getting the premiums and all the rules and everything, the policy from FEMA, and then we actually sell the policy to the public. So what exactly is the definition of a flood? It's going to be a general and temporary condition of partial or complete inundation of 2 or more acres of normally dry land area or 2 or more properties, at least one of which is the policyholder's property. So it's going to be over a large amount of land, at least 2 acres, that's normally dry. If their house is being built in a lake bed, that's not normally dry, it's a lake bed. Or it has to be at least 2 or more properties. And it has to come from an overflow of inland or tidal waters. This is like down on Galveston when Hurricane Ike came in. The tides came in very high and were actually washing houses away. Unusual or rapid accumulation of runoff or surface waters from any source. This is going to be the most common in large populated cities such as Houston, where the streets start rapidly accumulating water that then goes up into everyone's yard and then eventually into everyone's house. There is also what's called a mud flow. It's a mix of mud and water, but must be more water than mud. So there's a difference between a mud flow and a mudslide. A mudslide is when the ground becomes so saturated with water that it starts falling apart or moving underneath the house. A mud flow is going to be more like when water rushes across the top of the land and is picking up sediment. So it has some sediment and dirt in it, but it's more water than mud. So, misconceptions about flood insurance. A lot of people may think that their homeowner's policy covers flood. It does not. There are no private insurers that cover flood insurance. I'm not in a flood zone. That is not going to be true. Just about every area, especially down towards around Houston, Harris, and Fort Bend County, all of them are going to be in a flood zone, even if it is in a preferred risk zone or low risk zone. Flood covers all water damage. This is also not true. A burst pipe is not considered a flood. That would be covered under your homeowner's policy. Or if your dishwasher backs up all over the kitchen floor, that too is going to be covered under homeowners. That is not considered a flood. It is only contained inside one residence. It is not affecting 2 or more acres or 2 or more properties. A lot of people do not know that flood insurance is not effective immediately. Your homeowner's policy can be effective the date the policy is written. In flood insurance, there is a 30-day waiting period in most cases. So what are the flood facts? Flood is a non-competitive market. So what that means is that any insurance company that is selling the flood policies for FEMA are all going to be selling the same policy with the same premiums based on the coverages given. So if you have a customer that says, well, I'm going to go shop around and see if I can find a better flood rate, they're not going to find one because everybody is quoting the same policy and the same premiums for that amount of coverage. The first national flood insurance program was started in 1968. It is a single peril policy. A flood policy only covers flood and nothing else but flood. The building must be insured at least 80% in order to get replacement costs after a flood loss. If they insure the home for less than 80%, they're only going to get a percentage of the actual cash value of the building. Contents are always going to be paid at actual cash value. Whether this is a policy on a home or on a business, they are going to be paid actual cash value for any contents that were destroyed in the flood. Flood's highest limits on a single family home is going to be $250,000. So if you have an insured that has to have their house covered 100% because the mortgage company is requiring it, they would get the first $250,000 through the National Flood Insurance Program, and then anything over that is going to have to go through an excess flood policy. We do actually have excess flood policy coverage in Craft Lake. So you just need to go there. Again, National Flood Insurance Program will do the first 250,000, and the excess flood policy would cover whatever else up to 100% of the um, value of the home. So in determining the flood zones, the maps actually will let you know who is in a low risk or a high risk zone. If somebody is in a zone B, C, or X, then that means they're in a preferred risk zone. High risk zones are going to be A and B. Also keep in mind that zones A and B can have subcategories, like my home is in an AE. So there are some subcategories to A and B. The Flood Insurance Rate Map, or FIRM. This was enacted in December 31st of 1974. So what pre-FIRM and post-FIRM, pre-FIRM is a structure that was built prior to the FIRM map being made. All homes that were constructed before December 31st, 1974 do not have to get an elevation certificate. There are other cases where the FIRM maps in a certain area. The house was built before that map. That FIRM map was enacted. That could possibly be grandfathered in, but you will have to call the flood department and ask them if that house can be grandfathered in based on the specific situation. A post-FIRM construction will be built after the FIRM maps were made. So the FIRM maps can actually change every couple of years whenever FEMA redraws those maps. If they are in a post-FIRM structure, then they will need to get a elevation certificate. So required for post-FIRM structures that are in high-risk zones. A professional is going to come out, they do a survey of the land and figure out where the house is relative to the land around it. So if the house is built up higher than the land around it, then they're going to get a better flood rate. But if they're actually below where everybody else is in their neighborhood and below the surrounding land, it's almost like their house is built in a bowl, and they're going to have to pay a higher premium because all the water is going to be rushing towards their foundation in a flood since they're lower. So an elevation certificate is going to be mandatory for zones A and B unless the house was built prior to December 31st, 1974. They would not need an elevation certificate. Flood policy facts. The policy is only enforced for 1 year, and the initial buying of the policy, there is a 30-day waiting period before it is enforced. Upon renewal, that there is no 30-day waiting period. As long as they've had continuous coverage, they won't have another 30-day waiting period again. It must be paid in full at the time that it is purchased, so there is no to-pay, for-pay, monthly pay. You must pay 100% of the premium at the time that the policy is enforced. There are 2 separate deductibles, one for your structure or your dwelling and one for your personal contents. This goes for both businesses and individuals. So there are a couple of exceptions to the 30-day waiting period. As a rule of thumb, anytime a mortgage company is involved in the process, the 30-day waiting period could possibly be waived. In a loan closing, such as somebody is buying a new house, the bank is going to require that the house be 100% insured for all different things, their home policy, their flood policy, if they have a TWIA policy, all of these have to be enforced in order for the bank to hand over the check for that house. So in that case, the 30-day waiting period would be waived. Also, in cases where the lender is looking through our customer's file and goes, oh my gosh, they're in a flood zone, we need them to have flood insurance, it is possible that the 30-day waiting period could be waived there. Also, anytime that the maps are revised. Again, the FIRM maps change from time to time, and that would be where the 30-day waiting period could also be waived. So the next thing you need to do is get on farmersflood.com. There's going to have some training, and you need to get certified in the Farmers Flood in order to sell the flood policies. So go to farmersflood.com and to get more information and get certified. Thank you.